If you're picking between Pennsylvania and North Carolina for retirement, the state that looks cheaper on paper might quietly cost you $400 more per month. I'm Jim Stevenson, a realtor here in the Philadelphia suburbs, and if you're weighing Pennsylvania against North Carolina, here's what the actual cost comparison shows once you run all the numbers. All right, so Pennsylvania versus North Carolina. Everyone talks about the halfbacks, people leaving the Northeast for Florida who stop halfway in the Carolinas. And look, on the surface, it seems like an easy call. North Carolina's warmer, it's growing fast, and everyone talks about how tax-friendly it is. Pennsylvania's colder, older, and people assume the taxes are brutal. But here's what most people miss. When you're actually living on retirement income, Pennsylvania is one of the most tax-friendly states in the country. And when you add up the full picture, property taxes, insurance, vehicle costs, healthcare, the gap closes fast. In some cases, it reverses. Let me break down what's actually happening with the money first, because that's where people get blindsided. Pennsylvania doesn't tax Social Security, it doesn't tax your pension, it doesn't tax IRA or 401k withdrawals as long as your retirement age. Zero. North Carolina doesn't tax Social Security either, but it does tax everything else. North Carolina's flat income tax is 4.25% right now, and it's scheduled to drop again to 3.99%. So if you're pulling $50,000 a year from an IRA, that's $2,125 going to North Carolina every year. In Pennsylvania, it's zero. Now here's the catch. Pennsylvania has a 3.07% flat income tax on wages if you keep working part-time. And many areas have a local earned income tax on top of that, usually about 1%. So if you're doing consulting work or keeping a side gig, you're paying around 4% combined. North Carolina doesn't have local income taxes, so you're just paying the state rate. But remember, that's only on wages. Retirement income is still untouched in PA. What that means is if you're living purely on retirement income, Pennsylvania wins cleanly. If you're mixing retirement income with part-time work, it depends on how much you're actually earning. Now, there's one tax nobody talks about until they move, and it hits North Carolina retirees every single year: vehicle property tax. When you register your car in North Carolina, you pay an annual vehicle property tax based on the car's value. The amount depends on your county and what the car is worth. A $30,000 car might cost you around $250 a year, every year. Pennsylvania doesn't have that tax at all. You pay your registration fee, $48, and you're done. Over 10 years, that's $2,500 in vehicle taxes in North Carolina that Pennsylvania retirees never see. And if you own 2 cars, you have to double it. Pennsylvania does hit you at the gas pump though. PA's gas tax is one of the highest in the country at 57.6 cents per gallon. North Carolina's is 40.3 cents. If you're driving 10,000 miles a year at 25 miles per gallon, you're spending about $70 more annually in Pennsylvania just on gas taxes. Now here's the part nobody calculates before they move: property taxes. This is where people think Pennsylvania loses, and in raw percentages, they're right. Pennsylvania's average effective property tax rate is about 1.26%. North Carolina's is 0.62%. That's about double. On a $300,000 home, you're looking at roughly $3,800 a year in Pennsylvania versus about $1,860 in North Carolina. That's a $1,940 difference. But here's what matters. Pennsylvania's higher property taxes are offset by the fact you're not paying state tax on your retirement withdrawals. North Carolina's lower property taxes get eaten up by the income tax on your IRA and 401k. So let's run the math on a typical retiree scenario. You've got a $300,000 house. You're pulling $40,000 a year from your IRA. In Pennsylvania, you're paying $3,800 in property tax and $0 in state income tax. Total, $3,800. In North Carolina, you're paying $1,860 in property tax and $1,700 in state income tax on that IRA withdrawal. Total, $3,560. North Carolina comes out slightly ahead in this example, about $240 a year. But that's before we add insurance, vehicle taxes, and other costs. Now here's where it gets interesting: home insurance. The average homeowner's insurance premium in Pennsylvania is about $1,886 per year. In North Carolina, it's $2,933. That's a 55% difference. And if you're near the coast in North Carolina, anywhere from Wilmington to the Outer Banks, that number can double or triple because of hurricane and wind coverage. And here's the part that catches people. Those coastal policies often come with percentage deductibles for wind damage, not a flat $1,000 or $2,500 deductible like you're used to. We're talking 2% to 5% of your home's value. So if you have a $500,000 house and a hurricane rips your roof off, you might be paying the first $10,000 to $25,000 out of pocket before insurance kicks in. North Carolina's lower property taxes give you some savings up front, but when you add that extra $1,000 in insurance premiums, the gap really shrinks. And we haven't touched flood insurance yet, which a lot of North Carolina coastal buyers need. That's another $800 to $2,500 a year, depending on your flood zone. And if you want me to run this exact math on your retirement income and your priorities, whether that's staying in Pennsylvania or heading to a specific area in North Carolina, book a call using the link in the description. Or if you're still in research mode, grab my free Philadelphia Suburbs relocation guide using the QR code on screen. Pennsylvania's flood risk is mostly limited to areas near rivers. North Carolina deals with hurricanes, storm surge, and coastal flooding on a regular basis. Since 1980, North Carolina has had 84 federally declared disasters. Pennsylvania's had 64. And in the last 5 years, North Carolina had 18 disasters to Pennsylvania's 4. That difference shows up in your insurance bill, your stress level during hurricane season, and the actual risk to your home. Now here's where the math actually flips on people. Inheritance taxes. When you pass away and leave money to your kids, Pennsylvania charges an inheritance tax. 4.5% to children and grandchildren, 12% to siblings, 15% to non-family. So if you leave your son a $500,000 house, he owes the state $22,500. North Carolina has no inheritance tax, 0, and no estate tax either. Pennsylvania doesn't have an estate tax, but that inheritance tax is real, and it applies to almost everything except what you leave to a spouse. That's a big planning issue if you're in Pennsylvania. A lot of people use gifting strategies while they're alive to avoid it, or they can structure things through trusts. In North Carolina, your heirs don't have to think about it. Now let's talk climate, because this is usually the tipping point for a lot of people. North Carolina's winters are mild. In January, the normal high is about 52 degrees around Raleigh. You might see a dusting of snow once or twice a year. You're not shoveling, you're not dealing with ice. Outdoor activities are basically year-round. Pennsylvania's winters are cold. In January, the normal high is about 41 degrees in the Philadelphia area. Northern Pennsylvania obviously gets colder. Now, I will say the last few winters around the Philadelphia suburbs have actually been pretty mild. We're not getting buried in snow like we used to. But historically, you're looking at 20 to 30 inches of snow in most areas, more in the northern tier. And even in a mild winter, you're still dealing with cold temperatures, gray skies, the occasional ice storm. If you hate winter, Pennsylvania is a hard sell. But PA summers are significantly more comfortable. July highs are mid-80s with some 90-degree days. North Carolina summers are long, hot, and humid. July highs are routinely in the low to mid-90s with high humidity. A lot of retirees who move to North Carolina end up staying inside from June through August because it's just too hot to be outside during the day. So the question becomes, would you rather deal with cold winters or brutal summers? And that answer's going to be different for everyone. Now here's the natural disaster piece that people underestimate. North Carolina is on the Atlantic hurricane path. The state gets hit by a hurricane or tropical storm that causes significant damage about every 1 to 2 years. Hurricane Florence in 2018 caused over $24 billion in damage and killed more than 30 people, mostly from inland flooding. If you're on the coast or in the eastern part of the state, you're dealing with evacuation plans, storm prep, potential property damage, and really the stress of living through hurricane season every year from June through November. Pennsylvania doesn't get the hurricanes. You get the remnants of tropical storms occasionally, like when Ida came through in 2021 and caused flash flooding. But those events are rare and they don't carry the same sustained wind and storm surge that coastal North Carolina sees. For a lot of retirees, that peace of mind matters. You're not boarding up windows, you're not evacuating, you're not wondering if your house is going to flood. Healthcare is another big variable. And as we get older, access to top-tier medical care stops being a nice to have and starts being a need to have. On one major healthcare scorecard, Pennsylvania ranks 13th and North Carolina ranks 29th overall. That's a significant gap. Pennsylvania has more hospitals per capita, more doctors per capita, and better senior health outcomes across the board. If you're in the Philadelphia area, you've got access to Penn Medicine, Jefferson, Fox Chase, really world-class hospitals with no wait times for specialists. If you're in the Pittsburgh area, you've got UPMC. If you move to a popular North Carolina retirement area like Wilmington or the Outer Banks, you might be an hour from the nearest major hospital. The Research Triangle and Charlotte have excellent healthcare. Duke, UNC Health, Atrium Health, but outside those metro areas, access really drops off. Rural North Carolina has had hospital closures, and in some counties, you're driving 30 to 45 minutes to get to a hospital with full services. Medicare Advantage and supplement plans are widely available in both states, so you're not limited on insurance options. But the quality and proximity of care is better in Pennsylvania on average. Here's the lifestyle trade. North Carolina is growing fast. It's attracting retirees from all over, second only to Florida in net migration of people over 60. That means a lot of new retirement communities, a lot of people in the same boat as you, and a generally welcoming culture for newcomers. Pennsylvania is losing retirees. The state had a net loss of about 4,800 people over 60 in one recent year, mostly to warmer states. That doesn't mean Pennsylvania is a bad place to retire. It means the people who stay tend to have deep roots there. You know, family, friends, familiarity with the healthcare system. If you want a fresh start in a place that's set up for retirees, North Carolina has momentum. If you want to stay near family or keep your existing network, Pennsylvania might make more sense even if the weather is not ideal. Transportation is another small factor. Pennsylvania has better public transit in certain areas. You know, you've got SEPTA in Philadelphia, regional rail, buses. You can live car light if you're in the right suburb. North Carolina is much more car dependent outside of the core of Charlotte and Raleigh. But both states have good airport access. Philadelphia International and Charlotte Douglas are both major hubs. So here's how this all shakes out. Pennsylvania rewards retirees with income coming from the retirement accounts and people who value stability and healthcare access. You're not paying state tax on that income, your home insurance is lower, and you don't have a vehicle property tax. North Carolina rewards retirees who want lower upfront property taxes, milder winters, and no inheritance tax if you are protecting your estate. But the income tax on withdrawals and higher insurance costs eat a lot of that advantage. I actually worked with a couple recently who were dead set on moving to coastal North Carolina. They wanted the beach, they wanted warmth, they assumed it would be cheaper, but we sat down and ran the actual numbers. The cost to buy into a nice community near Wilmington, the 4.25% tax on their IRA withdrawals, the wind insurance premiums, you know, it all added up. We realized that if they stayed in Pennsylvania and downsized to a 55 plus community here in Bucks County, they'd actually have about $400 more in disposable income every month. They decided to stay. And here's what they did with that extra cash flow. They actually rented a beautiful beach house in Florida for the entire month of February. They got their warm weather fix, but they kept their financial base in the tax advantage state. So don't just trade a property tax bill for 3 other bills that add up to the same amount. For someone in the Philadelphia suburbs right now, the financial case for staying is stronger than most people realize. You're already in a state that doesn't tax your retirement income, you've got access to excellent healthcare, you're near family probably, and you know the area. The case for North Carolina is climate, lower property taxes, and no inheritance tax if you're worried about what you're leaving your kids. But the full cost of living, when you factor in income tax on withdrawals, insurance, and vehicle taxes, is closer than the headlines suggest. If you're early in this decision, don't just look at one tax rate. Look at your whole picture. What are you pulling from retirement accounts each year? Do you plan to work part-time? Do you own your home or are you renting? Are you near the coast or are you inland? Do you have health issues that require, being close to specialists? Waiting to figure this out later costs real money. Once you've bought, once you've moved, once you've set in new roots, undoing that is really expensive. The right answer depends entirely on your income structure, your spending habits, and your long-term plan. And if you want help thinking through the specifics, that's exactly what I do. Book a call using the link below and we'll map out what makes sense for you. Whether that's staying in Pennsylvania, moving within the state to a lower tax area, or heading south. Either way, don't make the move based on assumptions. Run the actual numbers for your household and make sure you're seeing the full cost, not just the highlight reel. Now you might be wondering how Pennsylvania versus New Jersey stacks up. And here's what catches most people. New Jersey just rolled out a property tax program in 2026 that can cut your bill in half. And for certain income levels, it actually makes Jersey cheaper than PA. Watch this video next because I'll show you exactly which income brackets win in each state and how the inheritance tax changes everything. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.